So you're sitting there thinking UCLA was mediocre. Honestly, that was a blessing in disguise. Mick Cronin's got this team top 10 worthy.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening every day. Thanks for following for the Bruins, right? Thanks for following through and even handling the flubs, whether it's Deshaun Foster or me being a goofball. Because this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoff season winds down, Olympics, tournament season. Sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But all customers can get a boost or a bonus daily. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. Where we get started today is wondering and discussing how UCLA is much better than they were a year ago, and how the best thing possible for the Bruins was actually not to make the tournament, was to be so mediocre that despite their mid-season surge and late-season attempt at an automatic bid through the Pac-12 tournament, UCLA did the best thing. Proved they weren't good enough last year, got an angry Mick Cronin who chirped and chirped and chirped at the NIL support, lack thereof, quite honestly, which he repeatedly said in the media, and said in his podcast appearance with Jon Rothstein about the NIL just wasn't where it needed to be. A year later, after he tried to do as much as he could in the portal 1 year, went with 7 freshmen, UCLA 6 transfers, has the Bruins in contention for a Big Ten title immediately, right? Like immediately. In a top-to-bottom, top-heavy league, right? A very super, super top-heavy league in some aspects. And if it's top-to-bottom, way better. Mick Cronin says, hey, it's intense. Every game in the Big Ten will be intense with packed arenas and everything in between. So he was making his comments on the podcast appearance with Jon Rothstein. And what he said was he's glad to have 6 transfers as opposed to 7 freshmen. One, UCLA learned and tried with the international freshman recruiting, went with a lot of freshmen to overhaul a roster that went and graduated UCLA, that went to the pros, that didn't want to use their COVID year, whether it was freshman turning pro. However it played out, UCLA had to overhaul a roster that was Pac-12 championship good in 22. 23, UCLA didn't work out, right? But Mick Cronin then now has 6 elite talented players, right? 5 of which you could talk about on that podcast, where he is comparing Kobe Johnson to Jalen Clark, National Defensive Player of the Year good, right? There's a reason Mick Cronin was in love with the players so much that, yes, in this day and age, you can be in the opposing locker room, talk all that rah-rah crap about how much you hate the team on the other side, and then next year join them and be a leader, a vocal leader, and maybe be the team captain or team captain B on UCLA's roster a year after being a team leader in the locker room for USC in the Andy Enfield era, right? He is comparing a National Defensive Player of the Year, 2 back-to-back Pac-12 Defensive Players of the Year, although very different skill set from Bona to Johnson, 6'6" NBA player that he is in love with. And Mick Cronin repeatedly said, yeah, you got to play defense. You can't turn the ball over. So initially, one talked about how much he loves Kobe Johnson. We knew that he is the highest rated transfer UCLA has coming in. He is impactful. He will immediately start. And if he is raving this much about Johnson this early, it's clear Stefanovic is in trouble playing time immediately, right? He could fight, but all I know is he went 20 minutes talking about, it seemed like 20 minutes talking about all his other transfers, and he forgot about the transfer from the year before, who was the most impactful on the team in 22 to 23, or 23-24, excuse me, right? Where UCLA has it was Stefanovic who was important double-figure scoring guy. And it's going to be Kobe Johnson who will be in the same spot, who can shoot a little bit, who can score a little bit, but is elite defensively. Elite, in which I'm getting choked up right there a moment ago. And talked about how much Sky Clark is going to be important. So imagine Mick Cronin sitting on the couch, frustrated about how mediocre his team was, been yapping all year long about how poor the NIL situation was. Well, it came through. it came through. The Bruins have literally bought a player, Sky Clark, to go in and be a UCLA player. And talk about the skill set of still being able to formulate enough scholarship spots for Trent Perry, who will be competing for time. With the way Mick Cronin was talking about this guy, with back and forth with Jon Rothstein, a lot of Mick Cronin talking about how Trent Perry's talented, makes me think I'm not sure if I've underrated Trent Perry. I just wonder, it's the juxtaposition, right? A year after UCLA had so much freshmen playing, and he gets a lot of veteran players who are ball players that led their team in scoring, had to do so much and got all the talent offensively. Where's Trent Perry going to fit in as a late recruiting win for UCLA? Well, Cronin didn't say anything specific. All he did was say he's talented, he's a McDonald's All-American, and I'm going to expect, this is my comment now, he is going to play. And I've been waffling back and forth as to what his role and Freeney's role will be when you have Dylan Andrews, who is in charge as the point guard. He will play less minutes, Dylan Andrews will, a lot less, I would hope less minutes, and not anything against him in his play, but you don't need to ride him for 40 minutes a game. They've got so much depth. UCLA, according to Mick Cronin, 1 through 4 has 10 to 11 players. And if play was starting today, UCLA would be running 10 players out right now. If healthy with everybody, Cronin said he'd be playing 10 players and reiterated his need and desire, his philosophy of wanting to play a press-style defense. Up-tempo, he's a Bob Huggins disciple who switched conferences, had a mediocre year, and then switched things and was able to have a rebirth of sorts with the new Press Virginia. All right. Now, Mick Cronin likes to be up-tempo, loves defense. Have to play defense if you're a Mick Cronin guy. As much as he got the offense, UCLA went out and got all this talent. So he talked about Sky Clark and his talent. Although he mentioned you turn the ball over, you're not going to play, which leaves the door open in a revolving door, which is going to be a battle between a Freeney, Sebastian Mack. Remember, Dylan Andrews has got his time, and he'll only be sitting once if Mick Cronin's mad at him, right? Just like how Tiger Campbell got sat in his senior year. He's not going to sit forever, but there might be a game, as with Mick Cronin, as hostile as he can be sometimes in the coaching box, when he's up patrolling the sidelines on the court, he will sit his best player, right? He will sit a guy if he's frustrated, not liking this effort, whatever it may be in the situation. UCLA's got the talent to where if Dylan Andrews is having a bad game, they could still win that game by 20 in a hostile environment, down 10, and turn it around and win it without what is the returning leading scorer in the Big Ten Conference that doesn't return a lot of percentage of returning scoring from a previous season. So UCLA, all they did was return one of their most developed players, who is a prospect, into a player which is now turning into a leader and a floor general for UCLA. You have replaced every weakness, most of them. You have replaced, in terms of defensive capabilities, your strongest defensive player in Adem Bona, and guys who are starters and have experience will be battling for playing time, right? Devin Williams, the biggest thing looks like he is going to be a redshirt guy, or a guy that's going to have to put on pounds to play at the 4. Most importantly, Cronin reiterated. Think about one of the last couple episodes I mentioned with Locked On UCLA. It's Adai Mara and his need to improve. The 5 is where UCLA looks to have their weakest spot. Not the scoring. It's Bilodeau. UCLA might go small, might be Bilodeau at the 5. Cronin loves the ability of Eric Daly Jr. to play defensively all around. So UCLA could go small. They could press, and you need to have depth in the backcourt in order to throw guys in there again and again to not burn out the energy. And we're not going to see UCLA go press every single game when they're playing the mid-majors early. But there's not a lot of travel in the early portion of the schedule. Apparently, there's New Mexico, there's Arizona, right? And then there is also Gonzaga on the schedule. All early games for UCLA, although I wonder how much of it will be a true home and home for most of those games. The Bruins are elite, and maybe they're not going to go 18-2. Cronin said it's going to be tough to go 18-2 in the Big Ten Conference, but they can still battle and try to win Big Ten Conference, right? 6 elite transfers who can all score, all defend, all rebound in various abilities at their certain positions, where UCLA, in most weak spots, could not have a complete player. Now you bring in 6 guys that are complete, a talented freshman, A guy who wants to grow and learn in a Freeney. You have returning guys who have great lessons learned from the previous year and are going to drive the new guys, as the new guys are going to drive the returners who are still young in their own right. A lot of these players with eligibility to use to earn a starting spot, to earn playing time. That turns and should be a healthy culture. And if UCLA has to get rid of somebody because they're not putting in effort or they're not liking the way that they have to put in effort just to get a minute of playing time, UCLA has the depth. But Mick Cronin, while talking with Jon Rothstein on that podcast, did emphasize a weakness. And we'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. All right, it's the summertime, right? It's been hot in Southern California. You've been wanting to probably go to the beach. You got the sunscreen, you got the sandals, you got the snacks for the kids. All those things they have in common, probably buying a ton, and probably more than that too. But you don't need to stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on your summer essentials, whether you're going to a theme park, whether you're going to the beach, whether you're simply trying to enjoy the warm weather of the summer. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop, earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, heck, even toys. So make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Again, that's $5 just for trying Ibotta with Locked On College when you register. Go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back with the code Locked On College. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the App Store, Google Play Store, and use the code Locked On College. All right, cruising on here into the second segment of Locked On UCLA. What are the Bruins going to do, right? What are the Bruins going to do with their weakness here in 2024 to 25? Well, UCLA is looking like they might have a little bit of a tail off in the 5, right? That's with the 6'11 guy off the bench. That's with the 7'3 Spaniard. That's with the Summit League Defensive Player of the Year, who Mick Cronin, when having this conversation with Jon Rothstein, says, hey, I sat there watching March Madness, watching the tournament, and he was like, these guys are going to transfer, like we all do. There's the mid-majors who now with the transfer portal are not only going to bigger and better opportunities to get better pro spots or NBA opportunities, they're going to cash in now. Your favorite mid-major Cinderella? Go back and look and see which of those players still have a large portion of their roster returning. Or those super teams that would stick together for 2 to 3 years and have multiple shots at a tournament? No, you got one shot, and sometimes it's a dream run by Cinderella in a mid-majors conference that destroys an opportunity for a big power in a mid-major conference. So you can go get talent and they go leap up. That's what UCLA got in William Kyle III. A key guy who was the tournament MVP in his conference tournament, was a key part for the Jackrabbits to win that tournament, get to the NCAA tournament, and compete. And yet he's still undersized. He's about the same size as Adem Bona, but he's an elite finisher at the rim. I've talked about that before. I think according to Ken Palm, where UCLA is one of the worst teams at finishing in the rim, shooting layups, which is a weird stat, weird figure to say. But Kyle is an above-the-rim finisher. Finishes a bit better than probably Bona does and won't be asked to do as much. Cronin did allude to it if he needed to, stretching Bilodeau at the 5, and I'm still convinced we're going to see Eric Daly Jr., with his versatility, play a small ball 5 or a stretch 5. And then you also have a Daimara, who I mentioned in a very recent Locked On UCLA episode if he develops, he's been playing overseas this summer, playing with the U20 Spanish team. Can he get strength? Can he get up and down the court? If he develops, Mick Cronin's been talking more Devin Williams needing strength. I think Adali needs a little more strength. His development from what Mick Cronin has to say, prospect to player to impact player is the next step, right? It's the transition between the few of those. All right, I yapped about him in the summer of 23. Okay, cool. This is a nice guy. This is a guy who could come in and maybe have an impact. Unicorn, great passing. If he can go dunk and play defense, he can be a big guy off the bench. Or if things go perfectly, he could start. I don't think there's a world at the moment where Daimara is ready to start at the moment in 24 to 25. but in his ability to improve. William Kyle's ability to defend the 5 in a Big Ten conference that, whether it's football or basketball, they are very strong. They're beefy in the post. They're beefy in the O-line. D-line. They're bigger. They're big and strong. They make the farm boys strong in the Midwest. Regardless of where they're literally recruiting, they've been strong in the Big Ten, right? Whether it's Zach Edey or the trenches in the Big Ten offensive lines, they got big boys. They have big boys. And now you have Kyle, who's still going to be undersized, to flip-flop, right? To get guys who can defend. If Purdue gets Zach Edey 2.0, not that he's going to go average 30 points per game or whatever it may be, you're going to want guys who can still defend above the rim, near the rim, and still be able to finish with those teams that have 7-footers and dominate the undersized guys. And UCLA's proven they got one of those guys. But if you want to bring in somebody who can be a little different off the bench, that's where Mara, if his development just continues to happen, Mara is an important piece. But Mick Cronin did stress the importance of one. The 5 is the weakest spot, and he was not as confident in that. Said to Jon Rothstein, saying, I might have Devin Williams as the 4 because he can't play the 5 right now. He's not strong enough. He's not big enough. Repeatedly saying that. Devin Williams would probably be a 4-year player before he's ready to play and compete at a big Power 5, Power 4 college basketball level, right? So it'll be a minute before Williams is an impact player. I'd like to see him develop. He's athletic enough. But if he's not strong enough, Mara is going to get those minutes like he did at the end of the last season in the Pac-12 tournament. And he stole those from Nuba, who was the clear longtime backup center for UCLA and would earn those minutes. A key moment playing in the NCAA tournament with an injured Bona in the Sweet 16 and 23. So getting those guys who play again and again and again are important, right? Very, very important for UCLA. And the 5 is a key weakness that UCLA might have. I was thinking it's a source of strength, depending if you want to go small, you've got a defender, you've got multiple bodies you can throw down there. But if he is not confident, Mick Cronin that is, in Devin Williams' ability to be a 5 at the moment, that means they might be hurting for minutes at the 5 if Mara isn't ready. But he needs to be for UCLA to grow. And Kyle, I'm more than confident. I don't want to say I disagree with Coach, but I still think Daly, who played the 5 at Oklahoma State, can still put him to minutes. You can leave Tyler Bilodeau at the 4. Maybe they flip-flop. You put Bilodeau as the 5. Daly guards the 5, and you flip-flop those on offense. You have Daly as a stretch 4 and Bilodeau as a 5. That would be unique. Bilodeau was a strong finisher in the paint last year at Oregon State, somebody who is supposed to come in and help that interior scoring as opposed to stretch the floor. So you can see those flip-flop, right? That's what we almost saw with a Dembona and a Die last year. Didn't really happen with twin posts. Not that Bilodeau or Daly can do that, but you're going to find different lineup combinations depending on how weak the center is for UCLA. I think Kyle will hold down the fort for sure. He's a great defender, athletic. But if UCLA needs to turn, or if he's not big enough to handle physicality and size, I stretch to even say that. But UCLA is going to have to rely on a Mara or some lineup creativity from Mick Cronin. Kind of open some eyes, right? Maybe another weakness. I don't know. Who knows what it is? I don't see it. As long as Dominic Harris gets into school, Mick Cronin couldn't talk about him. If he gets into school, you've got an elite 3-point shooter. You've got 6 kids coming in. They will have a fun team to watch this year. It's chemistry, it's the 5, and the travel. Those are 5 big spots for this team. 3 big spots. What am I? 5 big spots. Those are 3 big spots for this team to try and handle going forward in the next iteration of UCLA men's basketball. Because they've got the NIL, they got the support, where the rules change, portal, whatever it's going to be, UCLA is going to contend for a Big Ten title. And they're going to contend in the NCAA tournament. And dare I say, I'm confident in this team going deep in March into April. That is my thought and my belief in this team this year. Super. Last year, they got to be a top 25 team. Well, they never were. This year, I think they're clearly a much improved team and just have to prove it and develop on the court by the time the season ends. And if they're pressing, playing Mick Cronin-style defense, I don't think they will lose many games that they shouldn't. All right. Speaking of what shouldn't happen, hopefully UCLA won't and shouldn't be pushed around in the trenches. What's the physicality UCLA is going to have to handle next year? We'll talk about that in this upcoming Big Ten season, the inaugural Big Ten season, as we finish off Locked On UCLA today. Those warm, sunny days are here in the middle of summer, so fuel up with them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. You can meet your wellness goals in time for summer and throughout the rest of summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto when you learn about Factor meals. How do you make today an ability to kickstart a new healthy routine? 35 different meals, 60 add-ons to choose from every week, and you always have new flavors to explore. All you have to do is head to factormeals.com/lockedon50 and use the code LOCKEDON50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's Locked On College 50. That's Locked On College 50 to get 50% off your first box at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. And hey, you get 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And if you're still hungry, maybe you're hungry for sports like I am, right? The Olympics, they're going to come to an end. We're happy they're here. But while you're getting that boost and bonus daily watching the Olympics, and you've watched many soccer tournaments this year, playoff seasons during the early parts of summer, that's what FanDuel provides. Boost and bonuses daily to keep you in the sportsing mood as we head into football season, college football, pros, go into basketball season. That is what FanDuel is hooking up customers all summer long, daily, boost and bonus, something for everybody all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com, make the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So while deciding what to talk about in this show here with Locked On UCLA this day, I was kind of stumbling. I saw, all right, we're starting with fall camp, right? UCLA has that August 31st start date against Hawaii. It is the first and longest trip of the year. They still got to go to LSU, Penn State, and Nebraska. The trips continue to grow and grow. Welcome in new opponents who haven't been to the Rose Bowl. And I saw a well-written article from Ben Bolcher of the LA Times talking about what are the transitions UCLA has to handle. What are the big questions for Deshaun Foster? I've had my own. A lot of you are, why can't he simply have a 2-minute speech? To which I say it's a lot harder to do it. Instead of just talking to people, when you just stand there and you're talking, you have to come up with something. Even if you already have something, it doesn't always play out like it is. So Deshaun Foster, I continue to support him regardless of what he showed on Big Ten Media Days, despite what everybody else thinks. The big thing, though, I saw that was a unique question and transition for UCLA was how is the UCLA football team going to handle the physicality of Big Ten football? There's no debate. Big Ten football means a separation from the up and down football of the past Pac-12 after dark, when Arizona sometimes would go up and down the field, Arizona State, the Oregons, of course, a Washington with, Michael Penix Jr., even Oregon State, all these other teams that, those fun random matchups you get on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night at 8:30, whatever it might be, those fun, entertaining, high-scoring thrillers like a Washington State UCLA we loved in 2019 with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Big Ten football has their big offensive linemen. They're deep in the trenches. So what does that mean? Well, there's 2 points that we all know and wonder. Ben Bolch talked to Jay Tawee a little bit, got some quotes. And the other thing is, we're going to start offensively. Can the Bruins, with a somewhat newly shaped offensive line, Chip Kelly did what he could or didn't even try. I don't know what your opinion is on that in the recruiting, but didn't develop guys. He went after to plug and play pieces in 23 to protect his then starting quarterback, Ethan Garbers, and former starting quarterback and then true freshman, Dante Moore. And that didn't work. Garbers was pounded. Dante Moore, his face was in the turf more often than not. And then that Utah game was just flat out frustrating when UCLA could not protect Moore to save his football life in that game. And again, that was very winnable in Salt Lake City. And then Ethan Garbers comes back and has no protection and gets blown up in games against Arizona, costing them the Arizona State game. Her in the Cal game, they lose that one. He had to come off the bench shakily against Boise State in the LA Bowl, and Garbers proved he can run the offense, right? That was the then Chip Kelly offense. Now, I'm still confident in Eric Bieniemy's ability to develop an offense, call plays, but if you can't protect the quarterback, if you can't generate power to score points running the football, move the ball, then it doesn't matter how much of a genius Eric Bieniemy is. Even he knows with the Commanders how much it was they couldn't protect Sam Howell, who was beloved and then frustrated against the Washington fan base at the end of his tenure. We'll see how that plays out. But they couldn't protect their quarterback. It didn't matter what Bieniemy did. And he's so new into this, it's not like he's had it. They have an offensive line coach from the NFL of many years. They brought in Unije, Makahele. They brought back Holsteg. They got some pieces back that went to the portal, came back. Hopefully better pieces, better plug-and-play pieces, more depth at that position after losing some talented NFL players after 21 and 22. And then if UCLA can protect Garbers, look at the wideouts he's got. Loya, Sturdivant, Mataval, who is very good, still in a position that is very fragile in terms of depth at the tight end position. UCLA more than capable with TJ Harden, Keegan Jones, a million running backs they have in the running back room. They just got to have the offensive line. So can the new shaped offensive line do it? I hope so. If the offensive line is successful, UCLA is, in my mind, going bowling. They will be way better than the 15th spot they were predicted to be in the Cleveland.com Big Ten preseason poll. 15th spot out of 18 teams. I think UCLA can do better than that and will prove to be better than that if the offensive line is just simply capable. If they're dominant, then who knows? You know, the ceiling just keep flying. Now, beyond just protecting the quarterback, which was a huge, huge disaster at times in 23, an inability to run short yardage run plays. In 24, the question is, how can the physicality of the defense return? You lose one of the best pass rushers and greatest stories in Latu. You lose the Murphy twins, the physicality of Carl Jones Jr., right? You lose some guys in the secondary. You keep Jay Tuia back. And what Ben Bolch talked about in his article was how to study the big, beefy offensive lineman of the Big Ten who will just simply run the football right down your mouth and eat the clock, chew up time, and get yards. That's what Michigan did to literally win a national championship. Even though J.J. McCarthy got drafted, it was large in part because Blake Corum, the Wolverines, they could run it down your throat. And they did that to Ohio State. They did that to Alabama. They did that to Washington. They could run right down your throat. And so can some of the Big Ten teams if you're not ready for it, right? Even if it's an archaic offense, if you run a dive up the middle, then, hey, sweep right, sweep left, drive right, doesn't matter. It can be simplified football for an offensive coordinator if the UCLA defensive line, which was a point of emphasis in the portal, early for Chip Kelly, a lot for Deshaun Foster because he did lose Shea Brian Strother, another guy on the D-line for UCLA. He went to go after guys in the portal as well. But can the physicality be there? This is what Jay Tuia was quoted as saying. Big Ten has a lot of great offensive linemen. You look at the Nebraskas, the Iowas, the Ohio States, everybody. The competitiveness and the amount of linemen that have been drafted into the NFL from the Big Ten Conference, it's insane. So the fear for this defense that isn't necessarily directly correlated to having a new defensive coordinator, it's the amount of talent that's gone in a spot where if UCLA had last year's talent, wouldn't really be a problem. But you bring back Medrano and Femi Oladejo, and hopefully the secondary, which is very old, transfer heavy, with some limited experience in the corners, can hold up just enough for Tuia, who has been slimming his body significantly, right? Moving to the Big Ten, he's been shedding he's the lightest he's been according to in his career, his best shape he's been. That's their biggest. Jay Tuia is a beefy man, all right? That's a big defensive lineman. And he's shedding pounds to get past the bigger physical defensive line of the Big Ten. Now, that is important. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to come in. He has a little different role than what Latu did. But if the pass rush, the run defense can be simply decent, right? They can be decent. Then UCLA won't be embarrassed this year in the Big Ten like everyone is predicting them to be. If they can simply do it, if Akaki Malloy does something creative, goodness gracious, I'm all for it. but they can withstand the physicality of just not going north and south, force teams to go east and west, then I think the Bruins can stand a surprise this year. I'm not saying it has to come in the form of 10-2, flirting with the 12-team college football playoff berth, but it can come in the surprise of wins. Some doubting this team could go bowling, some doubting this team is bad enough to even win this many games, right? It's so polarized. The Midwest doesn't know what UCLA is, really, other than Deshaun Foster's quote, UCLA and SC, they're in LA. Well, let's prove the LA boys, the LA team is physical and not the glitz and the glamour that everybody's making fun of us for. All right? It's the physicality that will be a big jump to this Big Ten team now in the coming days, heading to August 2nd when they're an official Big Ten program. Now, the Bruins will have to adjust to it. The fans, the travel, the physicality, smash mouth football, which used to be old school football across the board, and now they've got to do it in a Big Ten, snowy, hostile environment that's unlike anything the Pac-10, 8, 12 has ever provided to be on the West Coast. Both enjoyable to different types of fans, but now UCLA is living a new life. And let's find out how they can do it as they try to reap the benefits with the cash, the NIL, the exposure. But now it's, can you man up and do what you need to do when it comes to holding up the offensive line, fighting through the opposition's offensive line. That is a different type of football you're playing. All right? Get your hands up. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. We'll count down the days to the Big Ten official move-in day for the Bruins. It's coming up soon. I'm Zach signing off saying, go Bruins.